Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Matthew.
Episode 364, recorded for July 21st, 2026. AWS billing bug sends invoices to the moon. Good evening, Matt.
To the
How you doing?
moon.
To the moon. How you doing?
Yeah. Enjoying my AWS bill that was very high for 3 seconds.
Yeah, no, I unfortunately here us on the West Coast, I think they had fixed it by the time I woke up and actually looked at my bill, but I definitely would have had maybe a minor heart attack if I saw some of the numbers people were talking about, like billions of dollars or larger than the GDP of a small country and billing errors. So yeah, it's we don't really think much about those things until they surprise you. But yeah, that is actually our first story. So let's just jump into it then. So a bug in the AWS billing computation subsystem generated inflated billing estimates for some customers, with one Reddit user reporting a quoted estimate nearing $2.5 billion for a single month, while others saw figures ranging from millions to hundreds of millions. The issue started late Thursday, and an initial rollback attempt on Friday morning failed to resolve it, indicating the root cause was more complex than simple recent configuration change. Amazon confirmed the billing estimates do not reflect actual usage or charges, meaning affected customers will not be responsible for the inflated amounts shown in the console. Amazon has not disclosed whether any accounts were suspended or paused due to the billing errors, leaving open questions about operational impact during the incident. The event highlights the importance of billing system reliability for cloud providers. Yeah, I mean, so typically Amazon doesn't bill you in the middle of the month, so it's a pretty low risk that you were going to get billed or invoiced directly on that date, unless you happen to already be overdue on a payment and you were having to update your credit card at the same time. I don't think that's really a big risk for this particular scenario.
But even then, they wouldn't have charged you for it.
Yeah, I don't think they would have charged it, and your credit card would have said $1 billion. You're silly. So you don't have that. You don't have that kind of credit limit.
Well, unless it pulled from your bank account.
Well, I mean, I don't know who. I mean, other than Elon Musk, who has that kind of money in their bank account?
Well, that's the problem. It's just overdraw.
Yeah, just overdraw. So the big penalty from your bank. I mean, the reality is that we don't really think about the fact that Amazon makes mistakes in billing, which they do. And I've heard stories from people. It's never happened to me personally. I'm kind of sad. I'm hoping for a bank error in my favor someday. But I've seen several times where customers have told me that, oh yeah, they misbilled us for something. But typically it's something around like, oh well, we had a special contracting price that we negotiated that was put into our contract that someone didn't properly document, and then they updated something, and that's what broke it. But I've been stressed before that if you have a lot of special pricing, you should definitely be auditing it because it can break.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I've seen a bunch of like automated like S3 pricing. Here's 3 cents back, or $5 back when we ran our own reseller program, and we'd have to process the bills from Amazon after the fact. So I've definitely seen credits in that way, but the bigger question is, how do you actually validate your bill? And that's kind of what I think this made me think about is, how do I actually validate that what Amazon's saying is correct for my small AWS account? Yeah, sure. I run a spot instance or whatever else, so I don't really care. But, on a thousands of resource, level account, how do you validate that, the EC2 instance is the right price at the right level, at the right instance type, or the load balancer, and how do you manage your LCUs and know how many LCUs you're using? So you get into this whole other world of how do you audit your provider? Because, if you go to the mechanic, you at least can say, oh, yeah, they did replace my oil. You might not be able to audit down to the number of quarts they put in, but, you can audit what they've done versus Amazon. And with millions of line items in there, you can't really audit as well.
Yeah. It definitely becomes a problem at scale. And also if you're thinking like, well, I have a tool like Aptio or Code Zero or Cloud Zero, whatever one of those other tools. Like they also typically are using the CUDs or the CUR reports, and so they typically aren't recalculating what your bill should actually be. And so I know bigger customers have built kind of their own mini billing system to kind of keep track of their own costs, especially with AI and some of those things. I could see this becoming something more and more people want to do, because tracking tokens can also be an area ripe for challenges of where, well, this query yesterday only took this many tokens, and now today all of a sudden the token count changed, and being able to narrow that down hundreds of thousands of transactions against AI cache could save you a lot of money. So I imagine this will become something maybe people are more interested in the future too.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how this evolves over time as people kind of figure out how to audit the auditor, essentially.
Mm-hmm. All right. Henrico County, Virginia might not be a place that you know a lot about, but I bet your data lives there if you're in the U.S. East 1 Virginia, because there's 37 data centers apparently in Henrico County, and with 17 more planned. So I can only think that must be the county where most of the major cloud providers, or if not Amazon, at least your cloud provider may be there. They're apparently asking county employees and schools, though, to conserve electricity after a 25% rate increase, which is set to begin July 1st, adding an estimated $5 million in costs for the next fiscal year. The situation highlights a direct tension between the data center growth and local infrastructure costs, with residents and government facilities absorbing higher utility rates, likely tied to the power demands of the nearby facilities. The proposed expansion includes converting Civil War battlefield land into data center space, raising questions of the land use and community pushback in addition to energy concerns. And this is just one more example of the growing backlash against AI data centers and data centers in general happening across the United States, between the noise pollution, the light pollution, and usage of water, especially in areas that are drought stricken, like I love California. It's becoming a bigger and bigger topic. And now you're telling, a bunch of kids they can't use power in their classroom where they're supposed to be learning because they didn't expect a 25% price increase. Is pretty crappy scenario.
I mean, I think it becomes a larger conversation too of not just, the schools, but how's it affecting the people in the area, the people that have lived there for years, that all of a sudden now they can't afford their power bill, and then everything else is like, okay, so you're now not just affecting the people, it's what is the actual effect of the data center? It's, the actual building of the building, the initial water load. Let's say it's a fully, one of those new data centers that you only load, the water once every 20 years. So they say, the one that when they did it in Georgia, everyone complained in the area that their water pressure was low for 6 months, and then it went back to normal once they loaded it. It's like there's all these other effects in the area that I think you have to think about. But I also think you can't be one of those people that says, I want to use AI and I want to use AWS and everything else, and just say, no, but don't do it in my backyard. So there's a middle ground. 37 data centers in one county feels like a lot, I'm just saying. So like there's somewhere I feel like that one's a little bit more skewed over there.
Oh yeah, I mean, Henrico County, I think before data centers arrived, was not a huge, highly populated area, which is why it was chosen. And so now it's been populated by a lot of data centers, but there are still people who live there and do different things in that space. So it's
Well, Henrico County looks like it includes Richmond, or is it just outside Richmond?
it's just north of Richmond, as my understanding.
It
But
looks like it kind of loops around Richmond. It's one of those weird ones.
Yeah. But you can see a lot of it's just green fields, and it's empty area for the most part in a lot of the county. So, but yeah, you definitely zoom in and see a lot of data center facilities if you look, know what you're looking for. Anyways, don't take power away from school kids. And I do like that, at least it sounds like in a lot of the newer municipalities where they're agreeing to put these data centers in, they're saying, we're not pushing rate increases down onto the general population. If rate increase is required because you're using so much power, you're going to pay for it, which I think is the right way to handle that.
I do too.
So, I definitely, and that's why I think you're also going to see probably the next 10 years, a lot of investment in, 20 to 30 megawatt mini nuclear plants being put into these data centers too, which will have a whole different set of political ramifications for people who are going to be pissed off about that. So we're definitely just the beginning of the AI data center pushback movement, I think.
Well, we talked about for a while small nuclear data centers. They think they were even smaller than the 30s. They were like 5s or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, they go from 5 to 10. But typically a data center you might need, especially with the GPUs that are so power hungry, you might need a 10 or 15 megawatt setup, and then you're going to have redundancy. So now you're talking about how 2 of them, so you're having this thing on 30 megawatts of capacity in that space. So, again, I don't know. I don't know about those technologies. I know they're coming, but I assume, even though they are much, much safer than traditional nuclear power, people are going to hear nuclear power and freak out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one wants to hear a whole conversation about stuff.
Exactly. They just want to hear, I know what nuclear is bad. So there you go. Well, moving on to AI as how ML makes money. OpenAI has trained a new GPT called GPT-Red as an internal-only automated red teaming model used to find prompt injection vulnerabilities and generate adversarial training data at the compute scale, some of the largest post-training runs. GPT-Red uses self-play reinforcement learning against a population of defender LLMs, with GPT-Red rewarded for successful attacks and defenders rewarded for resisting them. forcing progressively stronger and more diverse attack discovery. Incorporating GPT-RED into training produced GPT 5.6 Sol, which shows 6x fewer failures on the hardest direct prompt injection benchmark versus the production model from 4 months earlier, and it fails only on half a percent.
Half of
Correct.
no.
Yeah, 0.0005% of the GPT-RED's direct prompt injection attempts. In generalization tests, GPT-RED achieved an 84% attack success rate on novel indirect prompt injection scenarios against GPT 5.1 compared to 30% for human red teamers on the same task. In a real-world task against an AI-powered vending machine agent similar to Anthropic's Project Vend, GPT-RED successfully changed item pricing, created a fraudulent listing, and canceled another customer's order with the vulnerabilities disclosed and safeguards now being tested. So good to see these tools. I assume this maybe turns into something like Mythos for OpenAI at some point in the future to make this available to anybody. But the ability to attack from multiple vectors and chain attacks is only increasing dramatically at this point.
Yeah, and do you think we're going to talk about later too? It's just the number of vulnerabilities out there in the world are just increasing more and more. And I think a lot of it's just these tools are getting used, and you can run more and more automated testing against yourself. And specifically the daisy chaining stuff, 4 lows now can really very much equal high or critical or your system getting completely owned, because you're able to daisy chain those things in. So you get in with a low that gives you some level of access, then you use a medium to high to escalate your privileges, and now you have officially owned that system. So letting AI do this, and it'll be interesting to see how Mythos and GPT-RED kind of compare later on. But I don't think most of us are going to be able to play with those models for a long time in a real way.
No, unless you are approved by the government. So
yeah, right.
OpenAI has also released its first branded hardware, the $230 Codex Micro, a collaboration with WorkLadder built on their existing Creator Micro keyboard line rather than a fully in-house design. The keyboard's key feature is 6 frosted, color-coded keys that provide status updates on up to 6 concurrent Codex agent threads: white for idle, blue for processing, green for completed, and amber for needing human input, and red for errors. 6 additional programmable buttons handle common Codex actions like accepting or rejecting changes and branching threads, plus a push-to-talk button for audio prompts. Users can remap these and access 5 additional customizable layers for general shortcuts via 32 included keycaps. The device addresses a workflow problem for developers running multiple AI coding agents simultaneously, offering at-a-glance monitoring as an alternative to keeping several browser tabs or a laptop open to track agent status. This is a desktop-focused accessory that complements rather than replaces mobile monitoring options like the ChatGPT app. I don't get it.
I have a Stream Deck from 4 years ago that I think is more powerful than this thing. Like, I'm pretty sure I could wire up this to Claude or Codex and do the same thing, but mine are little LCD screens. I don't know what they are actually. LED screens probably that I can tweak and set to whatever I want. Now, I don't actually use the device that much, but plugged into my computer via my USB-C hub, and it's there.
And I mean, and that costs less than this device, is it not? It has LCD screens for.
Yeah. I mean, mine's an old one.
Yeah, but I think a brand new one with 9 buttons was like $140. So.
Yeah, and I have 15 on mine. So a 15 key one is $119 at Best Buy.
Yeah, so that's not that bad.
Yeah.
I guess I don't understand, like, the way they describe this is like, well, if you have multiple coding agents, you can see at a glance. I'm like, well, it only has one color. It doesn't have like different sections for different colors. Or I guess some of these buttons, you may be able to code different colors and tie those to different agents.
But only like part of them, which is weird.
But only a part of them, right? And then, okay, but like, how hard is it for me to press X on my keyboard or Y on my keyboard or N on my keyboard versus needing this? I don't understand the point of this. And I want to support the idea of like innovative hardware devices. I just don't think
I don't think this is innovative.
No, I don't think it's innovative at all.
Something? I mean,
they didn't even make it. It's a partnership with WorkLadder. So,
and that's after they're getting sued by Apple, which I think we decided not to talk about last week.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
But like, they're getting sued by Apple for stealing their people. So like, is there something else coming? Is this just an initial thing that maybe they are not using their internal team for, hence the partnership? Which is the only thing I can think of.
I guess. I mean, I had to see, like, there's on the WorkLadder website, there's a picture showing the different buttons lit up in different colors between idle, thinking, complete, and needs input. But even then, I'm like, I'd have to see someone like really using this in their workflow to understand how it's really improving anything, because I can only read so fast, and I don't want to just blindly approve what the agents are doing. So I don't think it's innovative. I don't think it's cool. I'm waiting for them to come up with something better. So nice try, striking a miss for me personally.
Yeah, I don't see the value of this, and now I'm actually more curious to see if I can get my Stream Deck to link up to Claude Code. So you've kind of gone the other way.
Yep. Well, we have two articles here about Moonshot AI's upcoming Kimi K3 model. Apparently, it's reported to perform on par with or exceed Anthropic's Opus 4.8, according to sources cited by the Financial Times. It's expected to be the largest open-weight AI model out of China, with parameters ranging between 2 and 3 trillion. The predecessor Kimi K2 already ranks competitively on open source benchmarks, and K3 aims to further narrow the performance gap with closed-source frontier models from OpenAI and Anthropic. Moonshot is reportedly raising a new funding round at $31.5 billion valuation, up from the $20 billion in May when it raised $2 billion, reflecting continued investor interest in open source AI development. This release comes as enterprise leaders debate the cost and data privacy trade-offs of closed source AI subscriptions, with some executives recommending open source alternatives like Moonshot, DeepSeek, or Z.ai, for organizations wanting to train and control their own models. And then Kimi K3 Tech Blog came out with a bunch of their metrics and benchmarks about how they think it's going to perform. And they are definitely trying to hit Opus 4.8. Now, I can't try these. It's not available to me in any place that I can get it. And Kimi actually shut down signups to their cloud because the demand was so high. But definitely the overall stock market has not been favorable to this week because, again, there's a lot of companies investing a lot of capital. And so these cheaper models put that business model at risk. And so the market is appropriately reacting this week. But I'm definitely excited to get my hands on Kimi K3. If it's as good as Opus 4.8, which is pretty darn impressive, I'll be maybe using that exclusively. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the price point, if I remember seeing it, was much cheaper.
Fractions of the cost of Opus. So
yeah, I was just like 25%, but I'll not throw a number out there because I have no memory actually at this point of it. But yeah, no, we have in our notes, we have 30 cents per million tokens input cash it. Then again, figuring out how pricing and everything else works of cloud, of not just cloud, but of AI is also hard.
Yeah, so input tokens, which were cash missed tokens, Kimi 2.7 is 95 cents per million, where Opus 4.8 is $5 per million. Output tokens for Kimi 2.7 is $4 per million, while Opus 4.8 is $25 per million. The context window for Kimi is much smaller, though. It's only 262 tokens on the Kimi 2.7. I don't know if they mentioned context increases for Kimi 3.0. But for those pricing differences, I can unload and reload context multiple times before I care.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a no-brainer to switch at that point.
Yeah.
So I feel like the rubber's going to be where it meets the road on July 27th to actually see how it actually is on these platforms.
How it actually works, yeah. And you expect to see a lot of FUD coming out about this. And, both Anthropic and OpenAI, I'm sure, are going to be pushing. Oh, yes, they do plan to have a 1 million context token window for Kimi K3. So,
but I still don't want a million. I've done something wrong when I've got a million.
I don't know. I agree and I disagree. So, I typically clear context a lot, but there are times where if I'm doing a lot of debugging, it's nice to be able to just not worry about parsing it down to just the tiniest bits. Like here's a console dump. Just take it, figure out what's wrong with this thing. There are advantages to it. As well as in long coding sessions, the longer context, if you keep it clean and maintained, is actually pretty advantageous. Like, if I can go jump between agents that have been running for a while, then, I got a code rabbit finding back, and then I go back and look at it. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I don't have to reload context now. So there are some advantages to it. I agree with you. Most things you do should be in the 250 limit. But when you do need it, it's nice to have.
It's nice to have. It's almost one of those things I would like it to say, hey, you've reached 200,000 or you've reached 150,000. Do you want to keep going? Or should I compact now? And take it that way versus just waiting for it to keep growing and growing and growing. Because a couple times I've caught it pretty large and I'm like, hold on. I've just been using this chat because I've been doing 17 different random things in my head. Let me stop and actually go properly fork and do different threads and go from there.
Yeah. Well, I agree to disagree, but I don't mind it that much. But I get what you're saying, Matt. So All right. And then finally, OpenAI is launching the ChatGPT for Small Business program, bundling virtual training webinars, in-person AI academies, guides, and curated partner integrations from Dropbox, Shopify, Intuit, Slack, Atlassian, and Wix. ChatGPT Work, OpenAI's multi-step task agent like Cowork, is now available to small businesses and runs on GPT 5.6, positioning as OpenAI's most advanced model available across all business subscription tiers. From last year's Small Business AI Jam events, OpenAI reports 78% of participants built a functional AI workflow in a single day, and 42% saved more than 5 hours per week using AI tools. Use cases highlighted include converting voice notes into Slack messages, generating real-time market competitor tracking sites, evaluating inventory for product or marketing ideas, and building training presentations from customer review data. The program targets a segment often lacking dedicated IT or automation resources, framing agentic AI as a way to offload tasks like marketing, accounting, and operations.
I work with a lot of small businesses, and a lot of small businesses are trying to leverage AI to do specifically those things and just the general interim stuff that a large company has hundreds of people in different departments doing it, where when you're a 5, 10, 1, 30 person company, in those ranges, you don't have full departments. You don't have people for that. So I think it's great that we're trying to teach these people. I think you're going to get a lot of pretty innovative things out of it, because you're going to get a small business that just doesn't have a marketing department or doesn't have one of these things that has figured out how to leverage AI to build a proper workflow and go from there.
Yep. All right, let's move on to security. Windows 0 Day drops the same day Microsoft releases a record number of patches. They released 570 security patches, which is a record for a single update cycle. And a 0-day exploit surfaced the same day, affecting the Windows user profile service. The exploit, called Hive Legacy, allows a low-privilege account to modify an administrator account's class registry Hives, which controls file association behaviors in Windows Explorer. The exploitation requires the attacker to know credentials for one account and the username of a second account on the same machine, limiting but not fully eliminating the practical risk. I mean, in general, 570 security patches is a lot of security patches. And I can definitely thank AI for all of those patches, because this is raising the priority on a lot of low and what would previously been considered a not risky vulnerability are now being chained into bigger attacks, which we talked about earlier. And now those are actually get patched much, much faster. But I also heard lots of complaints from people about 570 security patches blew up a lot of like indexes and security patching tools that had never had such large amounts of data to process at one time. So yeah, it was a bit of a rough week for the cloud, Windows patching ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, the statistic I used to hear was that from the time the vulnerability was found or announced until the time it was attacked was like a couple days. And I think most recently the last time I heard, it's like under 20 hours. So essentially, from the time they announced this until then, you had 20 hours to patch it. And most companies cannot patch. I mean, I would go as far as saying all companies, but maybe there's a few here or there that cannot patch that quickly, let alone get the updates from Microsoft and everything else. So you really have to be focusing on
Let me introduce you to a little tool called Microsoft SQL Server. And the problem with that tool is patching it requires downtime typically, and that's an even riskier problem. So
yeah. So you got those problems. I mean, hopefully your SQL Server is not public facing, as you've talked about in the past, and it's behind multiple layers of multiple firewalls. So somebody has to be in your system, but that's where you get the daisy chaining stuff, where all these lows between systems slowly become a harder and harder issue to deal with.
Yeah, it's only get worse before it gets better. But I definitely, if you have been sort of lackadaisical about patching at your organization in the past, I think, that era is now ending. And I think, I don't know if we need to get to the level of FedRAMP level craziness, but something between where most companies are at and where FedRAMP requires for patching, I think is going to be a requirement for most people going forward.
I mean, most contracts that I saw were 7 days for criticals, 30 for high. I feel like that's what most enterprise customers are requiring. And it wouldn't surprise me if that shrinks more and more over the next 6 months.
Curious to see if it is a momentary blip where we have a lot and then it kind of dies off, or if it continues to be a high volume. But I mean, the reality is a product like Windows, I mean, it's decades old at this point. It's big, it's massive, has a huge footprint. And the reality of that is that you are always going to have more risk in that product, which is why there's a lot of interest in like rewriting kernels into Rust, into different technologies in C++, because it helps reduce some of those risk areas. And that's why you see a lot of projects converting to Rust into other programming languages that are more type safe, more memory safe, because of the complexity of these things. So it's an interesting time. I think there's a lot of refactoring happening right now with AI. AI is exposing a lot more. We're all responding to it a lot more. And either this is a temporary bubble or it's of the future that we'll all be living in forever.
Didn't Microsoft announce that they're rewriting their kernel to Rust, or was it just they were adding Rust components?
I thought they were just adding. I know Linux has been moving to Rust.
Why is Microsoft rewriting Linux? I think they're adding, and I think the goal is to eventually fully convert.
The Linux community is the one who's moving major portions of the kernel to Rust. Microsoft is not rewriting.
Microsoft to replace all C and C++ code with Rust by 2030.
Got it.
Including the kernel NT/Windows kernel.
They're saying that it's not everything, just for the highly vulnerable security critical parts of the kernel and core libraries with Rust. At least from this Gemini summary of my search. And the 2030 goals there as well. But Rust is a much more stable choice than C++, so I get it. Or C even, which I'm sure a lot of the kernel is written in C natively.
Probably some assembly just to screw with people in there. Highly efficient.
Yeah, super highly efficient. All right, moving on to Cloud Tools. 1Password for Claude is available, which lets the AI agent complete browser logins and tasks without ever seeing the actual password for one-time passcode. Credentials are injected directly into the page at runtime, while 1Password remains the source of truth. And I will tell you, that's all I'm going to say about this. It exists. I can't make it work. I've tried. I tried their documentation. I have the plugins. I made sure all of them are updated. I made sure I had the latest 1Password. I made sure I had the MCP turned on. I configured the MCP and different things. Like, I cannot get this to work.
You probably spent more time on it. I think I spent all of 15 minutes, got annoyed by it, and said, this doesn't work. I'll try again when somebody has a better post, or they've updated, or I reboot my laptop or something.
It was partially annoying too, because they did this blog post about 1Password for Claude, and then none of their documentation got updated. So none of the examples of how to do it are for anything other than OpenAI Codex and Kiro. And I'm like, but you just announced this. Why did you not update the documentation to include the Claude steps?
Different pizza box team, Justin.
I know, but they're saying it's all you need is the desktop app, the browser extension, the Claude desktop app, and the Claude in Chrome. And I can tell you, I have all 4 of those, and this does not work. So try harder. I watched the video. That's how much I cared.
Ooh, you went further than me. I got annoyed and said, I gotta go leave, so screw it. I hope this works. And it doesn't work, so I'll move on in life.
Yeah. And then HashiCorp is launching TF policy in public beta on HCP Terraform, which is a declarative policy as code framework using HCL. For those of you who are going but they have Sentinel, you're correct. This is an alternative to Sentinel or OPA, letting platform teams write governance rules in the same syntax used for infrastructure definitions. Key new capability is relationship-aware policy evaluation, allowing rules to span multiple connected resources, for example, requiring every IAM role to have at least one attached policy rather than checking resources in isolation. The framework supports data source lookups during policy evaluation, so policies can reference external context like approved AMI lists or organizational inventories rather than relying solely on what's defined in the Terraform configuration, which that's a nice feature.
And that's a great feature because that was a major pain point.
It was. TF policy adds controls to block unapproved provider and module downloads before use, addressing supply chain risk by enforcing that dependencies come from approved private registries. And policies can be evaluated post-deployment, checking provider computed values like generated ARNs against organizational standards, which addresses gaps where planned time checks alone are insufficient. HashiCorp is providing an agent skill on GitHub to help teams author and test TF policy files or migrate existing Sentinel policies, easing adoption for current HCP Terraform customers. So I suspect that Sentinel is going to go away, or at least be heavily deprecated in favor of this method.
I feel like there hasn't been a ton of improvements to Sentinel in a long time.
Well, I know it is one of my biggest complaints about it is that the language is just annoying comparatively to HCL. So this is so much better from that perspective.
Well, you're expecting somebody to write Terraform, or a security person that probably has maybe or hopefully has some knowledge of Terraform, that to learn a completely other language for this one specific tool is only useful in so many ways. So I feel like the people I realistically saw using or the centralized public cloud COE or any of those types of teams where they were able to do it, but then they were used to Terraform and managing Terraform, and here's another language just to screw with you. And like it never was clean in the ecosystem.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it always felt like a bolt-on. I mean, I think that was the biggest problem with it, was like they needed to create a solution. Someone created it quickly, and then they embedded it into Terraform Enterprise and said, there you go. And then everyone was kind of like, okay, but OPA is better, or whatever the comparative to Amazon has a language for this. I'm forgetting the name of. That's kind of also policy as code type that people also heavily adopted. So I just think Sentinel just didn't win. And so
No.
by making this more closer to Terraform, I think they have a better chance of getting people to actually adopt it.
I'm trying to think what you're thinking of for Amazon policy as code. Like they have like SCPs, but
It's the mathematical proof concept they had.
I remember, I didn't think it was a prize. I thought that was like some backend thing.
It's part of it.
Cedar
Policy. Yep, Cedar policies. That's what it is.
I forgot about that.
It's still out there, and there's many companies are very happily applying Cedar. It also has a lot of value in some of the Gentek use cases too, because one of the advantages of Cedar was that it doesn't just look at user and your password as an identity. It also can look at like the posture of your laptop and a bunch of other things that can now factor into your policies for AI. So there's some advantages to it. All right, let's move on to AWS. AWS Lambda announces self-managed code storage. Lambda now lets functions and layers reference code directly from customer-owned S3 buckets instead of copying deploying packages into Lambda managed storage, removing the 75 gigabit per region storage cap for those using this mode. Teams with many functions or larger players no longer need to file support tickets to raise the storage quotas. Skipping the internal copy step also reduces the function activation time after it creates and updates, which benefits customers with large deployment packages or frequent deployment cycles. So it requires setting S3 object storage mode to reference via CLI, CloudFormation, SAM, or SDKs, plus granting the Lambda service principal S3 get object and S3 get object version permissions on the source bucket. Console-based updates are also supported for existing functions. No additional Lambda fees apply for self-managed storage. Customers pay standard S3 storage rates, and cross-region data transfer costs were applicable. AWS has also raised the default Lambda managed code storage limit from 75 gigabytes to 300 gigabytes per region per account, benefiting customers who don't want to do this self-managed storage option, which I don't know who you are, but just use your own buckets, which I was always annoyed that you couldn't use your own buckets.
No, I would always upload the zip somewhere, and then it would take the zip and move it over somewhere else, which I guess was the Lambda manage, which I never thought about.
Mm-hmm.
Though I've never hit the 75 gigabyte limit.
And that's a lot of Lambda code. I mean,
well, I've done a lot of development where I used to, like, when Terraform first came out, I would like have my Lambda built into my Terraform. I would just do a Terraform apply every time, which would just zip up the folder and shove it into Lambda. So I've never hit that limit, but I guess there's people that do it. I guess if you're fully Lambda based.
If you're fully Lambda based and you're moving around large objects, I could see you hitting that limitation. But yeah, I just always hated that whole idea of like, I know you're storing it someplace I can't see, and now here's a bucket you can use instead, which also makes it simpler for me because now I control the bucket, I control the encryption keys, I can control everything I care about.
I assume it's also because they don't want to have, which they're going to take hey, my Lambda stopped working. Well, you deleted the bucket that had your Lambda in it. Like, know that's what they were solving for.
I mean, that's okay. Like, don't bad on me, foot gun to myself. But I mean, it's still nicer when you have full control, in my opinion.
So. I'm not disagreeing, but I think we're not the people that are going to open a support ticket for that.
True. All right. Amazon MQ now lets customers configure EBS storage size independently of instance type for RabbitMQ brokers, addressing a long-standing limitation where storage was tied to computing size. And I only mentioned this story because we talked about RabbitMQ last week, and we said, they have that RabbitMQ, and I said, yeah, I don't care about that. And apparently, Amazon still does cares enough to still build features for it. So there you go. Get different storage tiers.
And it's just a quality of life that you could actually define it, where I guess before you couldn't. Never ran into the issue, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was dynamically managed based on the volume and the number of messages in the broker, and so you couldn't scale up automatically. Ahead of if you knew there was a large capacity thing coming up. It's very similar to Redshift and how Redshift clusters worked, or Elastic nodes as well. And so I think everyone's been sort of asking for that for those in those services one time. Is like, I don't want to be tied to your storage tiers. I need to be able to use more or use less, and had better cost transparency. So I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't see this following other services that sort of always have these coupled storage/compute models, where Amazon at least feels comfortable that they can manage the risk. But yeah, glad to see it. Amazon CloudWatch logs now automatically tiers data into standard, infrequent access, and archive instance access based on usage, removing the need to manually filter or export logs to cheaper storage elsewhere. Data shifts to infrequent access after 30 days without access, and to archive instant access after 90 days without automatic promotion back to standard for 30 days when older logs are queried again. Query experience remains consistent across all tiers, letting teams keep both high volume logs and CloudWatch long term, while switching tools or maintaining separate storage systems. So yeah, thanks. Appreciate that the thing that we do is always running on top of, which is S3, that had this capability that you wouldn't let us use. Now lets us use it. So appreciate that.
That's a really long clap.
It is a long clap.
That's my official response.
Yeah.
Really, it took this long to do that.
Yeah. Well, keep that clapper nearby, Matt, because Amazon Cognito now allows password hashes to be included in CSV user imports, letting migrated users sign in immediately without existing credentials instead of being forced into password reset on first login. Supported hashing algorithms include bcrypt, scrypt, argon2id, and pbkdf2 with SHA-256, covering most common formats used by legacy identity systems and custom auth implementations. And so finally, I no longer have to now plan a lengthy communication to all of my customers because I'm trying to move off of this platform to Cognito, and I need you to change your password because I can't just import your existing password. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I can cut it off, but it doesn't cleanly end the clapping. Yeah.
To find a shorter clip. But yeah, this is like, thank God. This was such an annoyance.
Can you export though from Cognito? Like, because I feel like a lot of people start with Cognito to kind of set up a basic POC and get things moving, and then they want to move to Octo or remove over. I've never thought about it in that way. I know I think there was a way, because that was kind of the hacky way to back up and restore in a DR region, but it wasn't ever good.
No, you cannot export hash passwords from Cognito. So if you're going the other way, you still have to do the painful dance. But again, that doesn't shock me. But at least, if you want me to move off of Okta to Cognito, telling me to have all my users change their passwords is just a terrible scenario. So how many of those emails have you seen over the years where, oh, we're changing our authentication system, you need to hit the reset password button to reset your password? I don't know if those people are running from Cognito is my assumption on those, but
yeah,
maybe they're running to it, and I just didn't know. So
I just also always assume that those were, we got breached and we got our password file, and good luck.
Oh, that's my other assumption too. It's like, yeah, it's one of the two scenarios, and I'll be getting a notice about my free credit monitoring any day.
I know I'm waiting for one. I think my last one just ran out, so I'm probably missing one that I should go back and find.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it seems like every other day I get a dark mode, a dark web monitoring about my email address. So it's just one of those things. AWS Control Tower Account Factory for Terraform now automatically reapplies account customizations when accounts move between organizational units, eliminating the manual retriggering step that previously created operational overhead and configuration drift risk. Enabling the feature by setting aft customization triggers equals account move in your aft configuration, and the reapplication process skips bootstrap and provisioning phrases, running only global and account level customizations for faster execution. Yes, thank you. This was dumb. Another great clapworthy announcement for sure. I didn't mean to actually do the clapping. I just was clapworthy.
I had to have fun. Oh, here you go. Sorry, I should have done this one.
It's a much bigger applause. It makes more sense. Yeah. So yeah, that's good.
No, this is one of those things that I was shocked that it didn't have when they announced it. I was like, really? It didn't do this? But I guess I've never played fully with Terraform Account Factory.
I went through a process where we were moving Amazon accounts around an organizational structure to get ready for a divestment activity at a much prior job to this one, and this was a problem. It's like, oh, you decoupled it, and now all of a sudden none of our rules are being applied properly. And we only found that because some developer figured it out first and deployed stuff he shouldn't have. So I was like, oh, that's fun. So anyways. Well, if you started talking about water or electricity usage earlier, and you were also thinking about all that pesky water that Matthew mentioned, low water pressure as they filled water cooling systems, AWS Sustainability is now letting you actually track water withdrawal data. So if you have customers or people who are upset about your AI usage is killing the water, Amazon Sustainability now adds water withdrawals data alongside existing carbon emission metrics, giving you a fuller picture of the environmental footprint tied to your workload. Data is broken down by AWS region, service, and account, and is reported annually through both the console and the API, allowing you to integrate into existing reporting workflows and dashboards. The feature is free in all regions where AWS Sustainability is available, removing costs as a barrier to loading adoption of ESG and sustainability reporting teams. Lower withdrawal volumes reflect data center efficiency improvements, giving customers a way to track AWS infrastructure efficiency gains over the time as part of their own sustainability disclosures.
I think it's going to be interesting where you're kind of going to be able to reverse engineer what and how Amazon's doing the improvements then. So if you're in a data center in a region for years, you can probably slowly see improvements, and you hopefully see these like bigger drops like, hey, we've, put solar on the roof, for lack of a better example, and now you can like see this dip in it. I guess this is more water, but we've updated our water system, but like you'll see these dips.
Yeah, so you'll, instead of seeing, a system that isn't a closed loop evaporative cooler, and so it's using a lot of water, hundreds of thousands of gallons per day, to, a system that's now using 10,000 gallons a day because it's now using evaporative closed loop, that would be something you'd be able to see. So That's what I think you'll find in this. Now, we talked about earlier about CloudWatch data moving between those different tiers. And the one thing, if you've ever been burned by this, is that there typically was a 30-day minimum for transitions to S3 standard IA or S3 one zone IA. And if you needed to move it back out of that, like you accidentally clicked the button, you need to undo it, you had a 30-day minimum, or you paid a pretty hefty fee, which is always sort of annoying. Amazon has thankfully eliminated that 30-day minimum retention requirement for transitioning S3 objects to standard infrastructure and one zone infrastructure, allowing lifecycle rules to move data as soon as 0 days after creation. This changes directly benefits workloads where data cools quickly, such as backups, log analytics, and compliance archives, letting customers capture up to 40% storage savings without the previous waiting period. Previously, customers had to keep data in S3 standard for 30 days before transitioning, even if the data was rarely accessed after creation. Implementation is straightforward through updated S3 lifecycle rules by console, CLI, or the SDK.
It's just a great quality of life, and I'm trying to figure out what caused them to make these changes, because I've definitely inadvertently set things to these and then deleted them or moved them and then got hit with a fee. So what's causing them to make these changes now versus where it was? But hey, I'll take the win and move on in life.
I mean, I think they're listening to customers, or the AI is saying, what are sharp edges that people complain about on Reddit or Twitter or things, and like we could fix those things. And so, yeah, allowing me to put something into infrequent access immediately for my backup is amazing. It's like, why store it in 30-day? Like, I have a Synology backup I replicate to S3. The chances I ever need to use that within that 30 days, pretty darn low. So being able to move it right to infrequent access is a huge win. And today I do it with Glacier backup, so I don't even have S3, but that's something that changed recently as well. Is you're actually now able to write to Glacier directly through S3.
You were able to write directly to S3 IA, but if you put it in there, your life cycle wasn't able to rotate down. Because I definitely
Correct.
did that with
that's right.
Stuff. Mm-hmm. So just a nuance there that But then at one point I set a life cycle policy to delete after 7 days because I forgot I started writing stuff to one IA, and then I started getting hit with bills. I was like, that's not very nice of you.
No, definitely not. All right. Amazon CloudWatch is announcing coding agent insights, giving engineering leaders visibility into AI coding tool usage and ROI. Integrating with Cloud Apps Gateway for AWS to pull telemetry from Cloud Code without extra instrumentation, Codex and GitHub Copilot are also supported. The feature is built on open telemetry metrics and surfaces them alongside existing CloudWatch operational data, letting teams correlate agent adoption with commit throughput, pull request velocity, and cost to output ratios by model. Practical use cases include setting proactive token billing alerts, tracking spend trends by department, and identifying which teams would benefit from expanded coding agent access. The ability spans all AWS commercial regions except the Middle East regions and Israel, with setup requires configuring Cloud Apps Gateway to emit telemetry to CloudWatch per the setup guide. So, I mean, this is nice if you've ever set up Claude to send data to an open telemetry endpoint. You get some really interesting data, and so the fact that it's just getting built in natively to the Cloud Apps Gateway Kind of surprised it wasn't there day one, but glad to see it's there now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just they know what to expose, and now they're slowly exposing more and more things to people. So,
well, I think customers are demanding this too. They're saying we need more velocity, we need more telemetry into what's happening with cloud code. We need to know what people are doing, and so I think that's forcing some of their hand.
yeah, I don't think they have an option because I think everyone's going right now. Whoa, our AI bills are so high. What are we doing with it, and how are we using it? And that's kind of what you're seeing now.
Yeah, I mean the token maxing era was glorious for moments. Now it's over. So.
Yeah.
CloudTrail now supports IAM identity-based filtering for network activity events tied to VPC endpoints, letting teams log only relevant traffic instead of every API call passing through a private link connection. A practical use case for this would be configure selectors to capture VPC access denied events only from identities outside a trusted allow list, which helps flag potential data exfiltration attempts while suppressing noise from known approved roles. This supports data perimeter strategies by combining user identity conditions with existing selector fields like event name or VPC endpoint ID, giving the security team granular control over what gets recorded. You can reduce both log volume and CloudTrail costs since routine traffic from trusted principals no longer needs to be logged, while still preserving visibility into anomalous or unauthorized access patterns.
I mean, it's great that you can actually start to select what you need. There was so much noise in there, and
so much
finding
noise.
stuff was like a needle in the haystack. Even once you followed all their guides and pumped it to Athena, and then to your S3, you had Athena, and we went down that whole path, and then tried to search it, but still finding the deny log, in there, or finding the allowed of something that you were looking for that technically was allowed but you didn't mean to was annoying.
You know who's really sad about this?
Who?
Splunk. Because now you can filter the data. You don't actually care about getting the Splunk, because that used to be, these type of things where it kills your SIM costs.
Yeah.
Because of, you're sending all this irrelevant data that you don't need to care about, but because there's no way to filter, you just ended up in a situation where you were logging everything. And there's sometimes it's helpful to have that data, but most of the time you don't need it.
That's how I feel sometimes about VPC flow logs. I'm like, it's great that it all is in there, but how often do you really need to be looking at every single?
Not very often. I mean, that's why I like bumping the wire, because it was kind of like instead of turning it on for everything, I could just bump between the two things I actually cared about for whatever I was looking at, which is great on the troubleshooting side, not so great on the security side. That's why they still want flow logs. But at least with flow logs, you're not necessarily capturing everything. But when you get into like the heavy duty packet mirroring setups where they're inspecting every packet, I start questioning the value of those for sure.
Some security person said they needed it.
Yep. And they're paying through the nose to get it. So
yeah,
you're welcome. GuardDuty Investigation Agent is now in public preview, automating security, finding, correlation, and investigation, cutting analysis time from hours to minutes by providing risk levels, confidence scores, MITRE attack mappings, and prioritized remediation steps. Investigations can be scoped to a single finding, a specific account, or an entire organization, and can be triggered via console, CLI, API, or natural language prompt up to 2,048 characters, describing areas of concern. The agent integrates with the AWS MCP server, allowing teams to invoke investigations through natural language via tools like Claude or Kiro, and fits into existing pipelines like EventBridge to SIM. So Lambda functions can enrich raw findings of the structured assessments before routing to incident response queues. This is distinct from AWS Security Event Incident Response, which pairs AI agents with human engineers for active incidents. The GuardDuty Investigation Agents for on-demand assessments rather than incident coordinations. Available at no additional charge during the public preview in the 10 regions it's available.
This sounds pretty cool. I'd be curious what it's going to cost in the long term.
Yes.
Because it always worries me with that. But I think it can have a lot of value because, there's so much, like we just said, there's so much noise out there. And how do you get the true, what is this and how does it actually affect us versus, okay, there's a high critical, this thing is talking to this thing. Okay, but there's 16 layers between here and there. So it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of having this on demand though, because that's one of the problems with the other one is it is all the time. And so if you don't need it all the time and you're just trying to investigate an incident or you're trying to investigate something specific, being able to just interrogate or like as part of a potential PR review or something you're trying to do, you can now invoke this in that different model. And yeah, it's really a question of cost. Is this super expensive to use? Is this relatively low cost for the times that you would use it? Or is it more cost prohibitive than just running the other thing all the time? Which I'm pretty sure is not the case. I think it was expensive. I remember Ryan going, "Oh my God, this is crazy." So. Amazon SES now offers 3 bundled pricing tiers: Essentials, Pro, and Enterprise, replacing the previous model where deliverability features were purchased individually as add-ons. Each tier builds on the last. Essentials covers deliverability insights, Pro adds managed dedicated IPs, email validation and inbox placement visibility, and Enterprise includes multi-region resilience, workload level reputation isolation, and annual deliverability assessments. The bundling approach is aimed at simplifying procurement for customers who previously had to evaluate and purchase capabilities separately, with AWS noting the plans are discounted compared to a la carte pricing. Available in all SCS regions except the UAE and Bahrain. And this is interesting just in general because they've had the same pricing for SCS forever.
Uh-huh.
And then to have add-on pricing, it was getting pretty expensive to start looking at like, oh, deliverability insights. And then you turn that on, all of a sudden the price has changed. So I like the idea of bundling it as long as the bundling comes with those discounts that are make up for it. I'm sure this also helps them get away from doing a lot of special private pricing for SCS, which is probably what they were doing a lot of because they didn't have this bundled capability.
Yeah, I mean, figuring out all the differences of SES was kind of a pain. It was one of those things that it started off as a pretty basic service and just kept growing and growing and growing over the years. So it's great to see it. The big one I think that I personally saw and see that's going to bump people is people that want dedicated IP addresses. That's going to move people from the essentials to the pro, I think, pretty quickly.
Yeah, but again, if it's bundled properly, it's not a bad thing because you also want some of those other if you have a dedicated IP address, you're going to want deliverability, visibility. You're going to want those things because you're paying for the dedicated IP. You now need to worry about warming the IP. You need to worry about blacklisting. You need to worry about all these things that you're paying extra for. So if the bundle's done properly, I think it's a natural, like, yes, I want dedicated IPs. I also need those things.
Right.
We'll see what customer reaction is, but I think it's the right move. We'll just see. Yeah, but again, I don't necessarily know if you need multi-region resilience and workload level reputation isolation. Like those are pretty in the weeds. Where inbox placement, visibility, and email validation, dedicated IPs, and the pro. It's probably most people are going to end up in pro. That's my guess.
Yeah, I just always like how each region was its own thing. So if you ever got blocked in one region, you could just go launch in another region, and Amazon would never figure that out.
Yeah,
definitely never had to do that to bypass reaching out to the SES team. Get them to unblock us because we were doing what we were told we were allowed to do as part of our customer contracts. Definitely never had an argument with them.
Yeah, never had an argument with him about bounce rates before.
Yeah, had to reach out to the SES PM in order to get them on a call to apologize for blocking us. Definitely never happened.
Never happened. All right, moving on to Google Compute Cloud. Notebook LM is been rebranded. Could you make a guess of what it's been branded to, Matt? Knowing how Copilot takes over the no, that's Microsoft's. This is Google's, so it's going to be Gemini. Gemini Notebook is now what used to be known as Notebook LM. Gemini Notebook is reflecting its expansion beyond a standalone research tool into deeper integration with Gemini app and Google Search, following adoption by over 30 million users and 600,000 organizations since its 2023 launch as Project Tailwind. I mean, basically, Gemini Notebooks is the closest thing they have to Cowork. And since ChatGPT now has a Cowork version and Anthropic, of course, had Cowork forever, they invented it. This just made sense. This is a no-brainer. Like, yeah, so you take Notebook, you turn that into more of a co-working type solution on top of Gemini Enterprise, you rebrand it, and now everyone thinks it's all one product, which Google desperately needs brand marketing help on this stuff.
I mean, I actually really like Notebook LM. I use it a lot for like personal things when I'm just like, I only want you to understand this set of data. I kind of dislike that they're been moving it more and more into the Gemini ecosystem because it was a good way to just have it focus on just this versus inadvertently pull all this other data.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. It's also the thing that competes with us as a cloud pod, because it creates podcasts of anything you give to it, which is kind of neat, but not as good as us. I don't think, Matt. I don't think we're been replaced yet.
We get our satire and our cynicalcism.
Yeah, I mean, Gemini's not going to tell you that Oracle is terrible. It's not going to do that. Why would it do that?
It might.
It might. Probably not.
Bolt started getting sassy with us the other day, so AI is slowly learning.
Yeah, I mean, it's picking up on things in our show notes, and so it knows Ryan is a big fan of the Eagles, for example. It'll tell you that all day long.
And that we all really love Kubernetes and thinks everyone should use it everywhere.
Yes, exactly. Cloud Run now supports automated failover for multi-region services with 2 new capabilities. First, a readiness probe for instance-level health checks and a service health aggregation across regions exposed via serverless NEGs. When paired with global external application load balancers, traffic automatically shifts away from unhealthy regions within seconds, remove the need for manual incident response during regional outages. 2 deployment paths are supported: global external application load balancer for public-facing apps and a cross-regional internal application load balancer for private VPC traffic. This works best in an active-active configuration with read-write heavy workloads that synchronize data across regions. Teams still need to handle redundancy at the database layer separately using services like Spanner, Firestore, Cloud SQL, or Cloud Storage in a multi-region configuration. This is available now in all Cloud Run regions at no additional feature cost, and customers only pay for standard CPU and memory charges for running the readiness probe.
I like multi-region, but I also feel like, and this is where my knowledge of and lack of really running production workloads in GCP has the whole concept of they're less region specific, I thought. So I guess I'm just a little bit more confused about this announcement overall.
So there are things that are very globalized inside of GCP, things like the network and IAM policies and things like that. But the actual compute stuff that actually runs on computers is very regionally specific. So when you configure Cloud Run tasks, you configure them in a specific region to run there. And then you have to either run those tasks in multiple regions and you route traffic to them, or now in this capability, you have the failover option, which we did not have before. But yes, anything once you get beyond the basic global services, it is very regional.
Got it.
Google's giving us 3 new Flash models, the 3.6 Flash, the 3.5 Flash Lite, and a specialized 3.5 Flash Cyber for security use cases, all targeting improved efficiency for production AI agents. 3.6 Flash uses 17% fewer output tokens than 3.5 Flash, while improving coding knowledge work and multimodal benchmarks like OS World Verified and MLE benchmark. Pricing is notably lower than 3.6 Flash at $1.50 per 1 million input tokens and $7.50 per 1 million output tokens, still not as cheap as Kimi, reducing overall cost per agentic task compared to 3.5 Flash. 3.5 Flash Lite pricing is 30 cents per 1 million input tokens and $2.50 per 1 million output tokens, running at 350 output tokens per second, making it suited for high throughput workloads like document processing and agentic searching. The 3.5 Flash Cyber is a specialized model fine-tuned for vulnerability detection and patching, deployed through Google's CodeBender agent, which we'll talk about in a minute, using multiple coordinated model instances to generate consolidated security reports. Access is restricted to governments and trusted partners by a limited pilot program due to the dual use risk of cybersecurity-focused AI. They just didn't want to end up like both Mythos and ChatGPT. So
yeah, they were just bypassing that, or they talked to somebody in advance, one of the two.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, if you're into the Flash models, which is really, it kind of undervalues what they do, because the Flash models are pretty darn good. I mean, most of the things I do with Gemini are on Flash.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to use the Gemini Pro models very often. Although, like image generation, I use typically the more pro image models because they listen to me better than the Flash ones do. But nice to see these are getting updated once again.
Hey, these improvements are always good, but I'm really curious about Kimi. I feel like it's the big winner for me.
Yep. If you haven't tried out Kimi, you definitely should check it out. It's pretty great. All right, CodeBender, born from Google DeepMind research, moves into preview as a managed AI agent that scans, verifies, and remediates code vulnerabilities available via Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform or as part of the AI threat defense capability. The agent goes beyond static analysis by building and running proof of concept exploits in a customer-managed sandbox to confirm vulnerability is actually exploitable, reducing false positives and alert fatigue before generating a fix. Remediation is delivered as code diff for developer review with an LLM as judge, step checking that patches don't break existing functionality, and developers retain approval control before anything is committed to the repo. This is support common languages including C and C++, Go, Java, Python, Ruby, Rust, and TypeScript, and integrates into CI/CD pipelines, VS Code, Anti-Gravity, or a CLI client for local development workflows. This follows a multi-model approach, allowing teams pick models based on cost, speed, or scanning depth, with third-party frontier model support planned later this year. Specialized version with Gemini 3.5 Flash Cyber is limited to select government and trusted partners access initially. Integrate with the AI threat defenses using Wiz to orchestrate the workflow, calling CodeBender to scan code, enrich findings with the Wiz security graph, and trigger Wiz Red agent for AI pen testing to prioritize the highest risk issues. Early customer quotes came from Salesforce, Robinhood, and Palo Alto. If you're curious in the article, check those out, as they are very positive, of course, because they're being quoted by Google.
I mean, I think that you're starting to see Wiz get more and more now embedded in the entire Google ecosystem, which is nice to see. I mean, I think it's going to be really good for security overall, letting Wiz see a lot more and more things. So I understand that's probably the least important part of this announcement, but it's the piece that I really think about.
All right, let's move on to your best friend, Azure. First up, they're expanding Azure infrastructure with 3 new AMD-powered VM families, the HD V2 for data processing, the HX V2 for electronic design automation, and the MD MI455X V7 for AI inference, all built on AMD's Helios platform. I mean, cool. I have new big servers. So if you're into those things, new instances for you to not remember the names of, because I never remember the names of these things.
I don't remember these ones. I mean, I get the naming convention makes sense if you understand and you have the translator for it, but I don't ever want to use these things. I give them enough money. I don't need to give them more money.
You don't want 500 physical 6th gen EPYC cores with 4 terabytes of RAM and 32 terabytes of local NVMe storage and 400 gigabytes of networking? I mean, come on. That's a massive box.
I'll run my Home Assistant on it.
Think how well SQL Server can run on that. You could back your Home Assistant with SQL Server. That's how it works.
Just don't think about the pricing of the Microsoft SQL licensing for it.
Yeah, don't. You just use the developer edition. It's fine. What's the problem?
That's right.
And just for a reminder, Skype Business 2015 and 2019 Extended Security Update Program is not going to be extended beyond October of 2026, closing out the period 2 of the ESU that followed an earlier one-time extension. Organizations still running Skype for Business 2015 or 2019 in production will receive.
You really don't need to keep going.
I know. We'll see no further security updates. But I'm just saying, you also don't need to reach out to me about any future job opportunities, because if you're still using Skype for Business 2015 in 2026 or 2019, I'm sort of wondering what you're doing.
I mean, I just saw this come through, and I was like, I just thought this was funny that
I thought it died like 3 times already. I like every 6 months we talk about Skype for Business dying.
I mean,
it's not actually dead either, which is the worst part of this. It's part of Teams. Like, yes, the official product SKU is dead, but like to move off of this SKU is just a matter of moving to Teams, and it's done. It's sorted. Like, what is holding you back that you can't get off of Skype for Business 2015 and move to Teams?
And it's even into like if you ever see like the cards say like something.skype, and there's like Skype is so far embedded in there. And the couple massive companies I've worked with that were running Skype 5 years ago, I know in the last couple of years it's moved off. So like, who's left?
Someone who's really picky. It's probably the government. It's always the government.
Yeah, it's probably some like, out of band, secure network or whatever.
Dark zone with spooks who don't want to move. I don't know. Well, anyways, if you're still using Skype for Business and you're listening to our podcast, get off of it. It's over.
Yeah.
It's done. Move on. And finally, our last story of the week from our friends at DigitalOcean. They're apparently raising on-demand prices for NVIDIA and AMD GPU droplets effective August 1st, citing strong demand for GPU capacity. Existing customers must destroy droplets before that date if they want to avoid the new rates. Billing changes will apply to any active workloads running on or after August 1st, with updates charges appearing on the September 1st, 2026 bill, giving customers roughly a month lag before seeing the full impact. Reserve 12-month pricing is also increasing, but customers currently under contract keep their locked-in rate. So quick, go lock in a rate, which incentivizes existing customers to consider extending contracts before that change goes into effect. And this is just a reality of the continuing pressure on the compute market for memory and GPU scarcity. You're going to see prices going up across the board on GPU and memory dependent services like this. So unfortunately, it's happening to DigitalOcean, but it's also happening to everybody else too. So they're not the only one in this camp.
Yeah, I think you're going to see it pretty much everywhere. And you can even see the pricing of every new processor is going up as they do it. It's no longer like, hey, everyone, please move from the M1s to the M3s and we give you a 5% discount every single time. Now it's like it's either flatline. And they're like, well, it's flatline, but at the same point, you're getting an extra 5% out of it. So the story has changed over the years. And here you're just getting the increase because it's just more expensive. There's only so much they can do about that.
Yep. Well, look now. You have a week before August 1st, so get to it. All right, Matt. It's been another fantastic week with you here. We'll see you next week here at the pod.
See ya.
Another week of cloud news wrapped up. Bolt will collect the news. Justin will get the notes. Jonathan will write some code. Ryan will watch the perimeter. And Matt will reluctantly watch Azure. Till next week for AI, Amazon, Google Cloud, and Azure. And hey, maybe even Oracle. Who knows? Check out the cloud developer.net for our newsletter. Join our Slack, message us on socials, or leave a review.